10:30. And you know what that means. Now, I'm going to lay this out for you. And then it goes to whether or not you do it, whether or not the Kings would do it, whether or not the Bucks would do it. We are talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Bobby Portis. Somebody that a lot of teams, based on the contract, how nice that contract looks, somebody that a lot of teams, a lot of fans have been clamoring for. And we have a proposed path from one Will Z Stats on how this could get done. Let's get right on into it. Will Z Stats talks about the Kings trading Jalen McDaniels to the San Antonio Spurs, emptying a roster spot and freeing up about $4.7 million in cap space. To be fair, this was written before the Dougie McBuckets deal. We believe that nothing should change. I confirmed with Brendan Nunez and Frankie Cardicelli. Based on what Will is talking about, this still should be possible. Will goes on to write, the Kings have the ability to use their mid-level exception. And one of the new ways they can use it with the new CBA is via trade. That new rule makes bringing in a player of Bobby Portis' contract status more feasible than in the past. Portis is set to make around $12.5 million this season with a player option of $13.4 million next year. That is $12.5 that fits like a glove in the Kings' $12.8 million MLE. The Kings could send, this is where it gets sticky. Hang with me. The Kings could send Devin Carter, the 13th overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft, to make the money work and draft picks as needed to make the deal worth it for the Bucks. It would be a huge gamble as Sacramento will lose a young, promising player in Carter and lose flexibility around the luxury cap. But Portis is the exact type of player the Kings have been searching for years. He works hard, defends well, rebounds, and does all the small things to impact winning. Much like Keon Ellis, it's the perfect archetype of player to add to the Kings stars. It's unlikely, and I would be shocked if it actually happened, but for one last time this offseason, I'm allowing myself to dream big. If the Kings were to make a move for Portis, it would be the perfect win-now move to shake the franchise. Your thoughts, Chris Watkins?
Yeah, I'm not as big of a Bobby Portis guy as I think a lot of people are out there. I think he's a really solid player for sure. You look at all of his efficiency numbers, he hits all the things you want him to hit. I think I just more kind of, I think he's a really solid player. He's obviously been a 6 Man of the Year candidate before in the past as well. Obviously a champion with the Bucks. I don't really see exactly what the hope is for him here in Sacramento. If he were to come, I think, you would then still have to move somebody to the Kings bench. And if you're trading Devin Carter, that kind of does hurt a lot of the Kings' future. They then don't have their most recent first-round draft pick will have been Keegan Murray, who is an older rookie to start with too. So if you're thinking about maybe the future of this thing, I think it's a good all-in move if you want to do that. It's just a little bit risky for the future. And I'm looking at Bobby Portis' contract. He also has a player option for $13 million. Kind of feel like he can make more than that in the open market. So it's only a 1-year rental is my big problem with it.
Yeah, he's definitely opting out of that. As far as I don't necessarily know that he has to be a starter on this team. I think he could come off the bench. I mean, I like the starting five. I think we run into the same problem that it seems like a theme with this Kings team. It's these guys that you want to make the team better, but they're almost too good for what the Kings would have them do. It's basically, I call it the Valanciunas problem, because a lot of people wanted Valanciunas, and that was a guy who, okay, we're not really going to play DeMontis at the 4, so you got to bring Valanciunas off the bench, and he's not a bench player. Bobby Portis has been a bench player, but he's been a bench player on a championship team. You can make the argument, well, if Bobby Portis comes to this team, then they would be a championship team. So he could come off the bench there as well. I think that is the argument. Making $12 million, that is an easily understood bench player salary. I do think he's for sure going to opt out. He's for sure opting out. But so you're losing Devin Carter, and you're hoping that Bobby re-ups, and he's going to re-up at a higher price point. So that luxury tax and the aprons, what does it do to that?
Yeah.
So it's tough. And even from what Will Z Stats said in the initial write-up, that's not just Devin Carter. That's probably more than that. Right. So you're giving up Devin Carter. I don't think it would be a first, but if you're giving up Devin Carter, that's essentially the first. So you're giving up Devin Carter, maybe a second, maybe even a Colby Jones, somebody like that, to get Bobby Portis for essentially an all-in move. As much as I love Bobby Portis, it's hard for me to logistically say that this makes sense from the Kings standpoint. That's why it's been so hard to cook up deals for Bobby Portis, because even if you do, from the long-term standpoint, I think you're right, Chris. If this is even a 2-year deal, I think I would play around with it more. But the player option to me, Bobby Portis might be one of the most underpaid players in the league right now.
Yeah, and it's also the other side of why would Milwaukee do that as well? Like Milwaukee, maybe if they were, like the Bulls or something like that, and they aren't playing for anything, but the Bucks especially, I mean, they fired their new coach halfway through last year, bring in Doc Rivers. Overall, it's just a disappointing season last year. I mean, the only reason I think Milwaukee would do this is if they just feel like the wheels fall off in the middle of the season again, and this is more of a trade deadline move for them, just because, again, what's the Bucks' purpose of essentially selling out the season? I mean, if you don't have Bobby Portis, who has been a 13 to 14 point per game scorer these past 3 years for them, they're not going to be nearly as successful. So that's just really the part of it, especially for Milwaukee, that doesn't make sense. And I'm looking at his Basketball Reference. One of his nicknames, the Mayor of Milwaukee. That kind of makes me feel like they're not going to be quick to move off from him, and it would take a Godfather offer essentially for relatively a Godfather offer in order for them to move off of Bobby Portis. I don't think it's going to be, hey, that's a good piece. That makes sense for us. I think you're going to have to blow their socks off in order for them to move on from a guy like Bobby Portis.
From the 530, Devin Carter for Crazy Eyes, pull the trigger. We have plenty of guards. We know what we're getting with Crazy Eyes, and it's exactly what we need. Plus, we're in win now mode. It's a gamble, but worth it. That is from Gino. I mean, again, Gino, to me, I would probably be more so on your side if it was 2 years. That player option, Bobby Portis, as Chris likes to say, we just got word that this player, Zach LaVine, opted in. We just got a Sean bomb that Bobby Portis has opted out of his player option, because he might be looking, if he's not looking to be a starter, he's definitely looking to, at the very least, be a bench player.
He's going to be 30 years old entering free agency too. So I think he's going to look for, like, that's his last opportunity to get a bag, maybe his last opportunity to find a starting spot too.
Yeah. And look, maybe he's okay to again, it really goes back to how the team is viewed, because you could sit there and say Bobby might want to continue being a six man, but again, that's a six man on a team that has essentially been one of the favorites. Adding Bobby Portis to this roster, do you think that would make do you think that would make the Kings a favorite?
I don't think so. No, no, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I'm just looking here, Chris, as to making some of the money work. Yeah, you got Kevin Huerter for $16.8 million. Some people are calling Dougie McBuckets a Kevin Huerter replacement. We can talk about that a little bit later. I don't think that's necessarily the case. So yeah, a lot of different ways to look at this. Trey Lyles at $8 million, but again, got to make sense for Milwaukee, and Milwaukee knows it's one of those tough situations where you're getting a good deal. Okay, if you're the Kings, so Milwaukee's going to want to sell that. But then the Kings have to come back and say, yeah, we know we're getting a good deal, and we know that Bobby Portis is going to opt out. And then at the end of the day, the Bucks can say, we don't have to do the deal. We're still in win now. This is only the second year. We didn't even get a fair shake at the playoffs because Dame and Giannis were injured. So we really don't want to move him unless you're going to overpay. So I think that's where this thing ultimately gets to. If we're talking 2 years, 3 years, I'd have the conversation, but an opt out after one. As much as I just said yesterday, Devin Carter better be good, I'm not willing to give up Devin Carter for only one guaranteed year of Bobby Portis. I'm higher on Bobby Portis than you, Chris, but even still, it's that 1 year, it's the opt out that worries me.
Yeah, and I mean with Devin Carter too, you're also giving up his first contract's 4 years, I think maybe 5, and then you get an extent. Like you're missing out on potentially 9 years of team control over Devin Carter for a single season of Bobby Portis. That doesn't really make sense. And then I know a lot of people are not feeling great because Devin Carter is not going to play for a large portion of this season, but even still, you're like a ankle tweak away from having Mason Jones as your backup point guard.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like I like the security, even though it's not going to be there for a lot of the season. I like the thought of having Devin Carter be the team's future of backup point guard. And you still have Jordan McLaughlin there, who's more than capable of serving time until he's ready to go. And once Devin Carter is ready to go, I think him and Jordan McLaughlin are going to be a great backup point guard duo.
Coming up next, we ask the question, are fans just jealous of the 49ers? Stiles and Watkins, Sactown Sports.